I like to put myself in positions where you can't go back, right? I had already left the company once. I left it twice, and they said I can't be hired back, right? I think that's a great way to force grit, because if you don't have another option, you figure out how to make it work. Yeah, I knew I didn't want to go back to engineering, so by essentially quitting and moving 3,000 miles away, I kind of removed that option to go back. For me, grit is the absence of motivation and being able to persevere anyway, whether good or bad motivation. I think a lot of people focus on persevering through when you're going through a spell or a valley in life. On the other side of that valley is a mountain, and when everything's going really well, I think it's also hard to persevere as well, because you don't have that motivation anymore because things are going the way that you want them to.
All right, today we're back with a guest. And this guest, I have to say something up front before we even start. This man has been a coaching client of mine for well over a year. And somewhere along the way, he's become a good friend of mine, dear friend of mine. And he's one of the most kind-hearted people that I know. And I admire this guy, not only for his work ethic, but for his genuine, the genuine genius that he is when it comes to doing what he does, and we're going to dive into today. But do not, and I repeat, do not let this kindness fool you. This guy is an absolute machine. And again, I admire this guy for his work ethic, for his drive. Chemical engineer by training, walked away from the corporate ladder to sell on Amazon with zero e-commerce experience. Year one, and this is what's fascinating. Year one, 7 figures. Year two, tripled it to 3 million, built entirely from a camper. And this I can vouch for, because our initial call was him inside of a camper. And so, again, entirely from a camper with his wife. Year three, 7 million in revenue, more than 11 million in total revenue, just under 3.5 years. Guys, this is no easy feat. No easy feat. I'm telling you this from personal experience. And those of you who've done big things, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's traveled to over 40 states, 15 countries. Today, he continues to run his e-commerce business, and he founded a SaaS platform called Replen Pulse, which we're going to dive into as well. And he's still in the middle of probably one of the hardest shifts he's ever made. Matthew Hassler, my dude, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Karl. You're very kind. Thank you for having me on the podcast and getting the opportunity to talk to you for a little bit.
Yeah, man. Dude, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Every conversation I have with you, I always enjoy. Of course, it's usually one of our session calls, but it's truly one of those calls I just enjoy being with you. And you learn from me, but I think I learn more from you than you learn from me, if that makes any sense. But so let's get into this conversation, because I feel like we could talk so long, but we got to stay in the scope of our time together, and I want to respect that. So Matt, my dude, take me back to the chemical engineering days. Paint the picture to the audience, the listeners out there. What were you doing? Like, what did daily life look like for you when you were on somebody else's clock?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a long time, I wanted to be a chemical engineer. Seemed like a good opportunity to make some pretty decent money and some fun work along the way. So about 7-8 years ago, I started the life of a chemical engineer. The time was, of course, salaried 40, 50 hours a week. Fell in love with it. When you're salaried, I'd literally come in the evenings when I was bored and work, because I just enjoyed the concept of improving systems and, hanging out with other people and making their lives better. Over like 3 to 4 years, the work increased. We started getting into some projects. Started working on like the corporate projects, especially like, multi-million, like up to $30 million projects. Nice. Was involved with. And those would have really, really high demand to them.
Yeah.
It's been as high as like 110, 120 hour weeks while being on call. So took a lot of motivation in those regards.
I can imagine.
I know there's a better word for it.
Yep.
Jumping back and forth, went into management for a bit, switched to a different company, jumped back and continued, and just realized it just wasn't wasn't doing it for me, and I wanted something else for all that hard work.
I get it, man. Thanks for sharing that. And just a very small glimpse into that hustle and sharing that. And this, guys, this is the first time I'm actually hearing that story. And hearing this, I can easily see the translation, right? Translation of having a servant heart for people, heart for helping others, and just your drive and ambition to, fix things and implement systems and create things. And it all makes sense now. Not that it ever not makes sense, but it makes a lot more sense. So you're grinding engineering, you're climbing the corporate ladder, doing what you told success looked like, right? Before Amazon was ever on your radar, what did a good week look like for you?
I'd say a good week. Let's just say it's 50 hours a week at work. I went and tried to find a bunch of other avenues. I was a realtor temporarily. I tried to do some Twitch gaming,
Nice.
different aspects like that to try to make a hustle, make some money, and provide better for family long term. In regards to, I guess, the other side of it, like the worst weeks, 9 days on, 14-hour days on call, coming in at midnight daily as well. So that was kind of like the stretch, depending on what kind of project we were running through. But a good week would be working from home or going to work for 50 hours and then coming home in the evening, spending some time with my wife, but then working on something else, another side hustle.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned this. You mentioned on your intake that you did some side hustles, and you just talked about that, right? So during the day, you're working your W-2 job. In your free time, I remember seeing this on your bio, quote unquote free time, as in like hilarious. You were flipping houses, every spare opportunity you got, right? So take me into that season. Share with me and those that are listening or watching, what were you chasing at that point in time?
I was chasing the concept of a better life, to be able to have a free schedule, to be able to at least replace my income, but being able to make sure that I'd be ready in case whenever the opportunity has, like, have children, make sure I can attend like doctor's appointments was kind of the freedom and the flexible schedule that I was seeking at the time. Of course, being an engineer, there's a good income associated with it. So just making sure that I could set ourselves up for a replacement of that income and get the time. One of those situations where I'm not required to answer a phone call at 9 o'clock at night and know that I'm going to be gone for 4 or 5 hours for a problem.
I think that can resonate with quite a few people, for sure. You told me that you spent a short amount of time or a fair amount of time. When I say fair amount, a short amount of time with Logan in that season, right? What was going on between the two of you? Were you aware of it in real time, or did you only see it afterwards?
At the time, at the time she was saying she wanted more time with me, which was very, very real. I'm, of course, prioritizing what I think is the appropriate thing with a career. When it was 9 days on, 1 day off, I spent that day off working on the house flip because we had a hard money loan at the time that was coming due.
Yeah.
So I was feeling the pinch. Looking back on it now, I can see that her needs were definitely not prioritized the way they should have been by me, and that I should have listened more and probably done more pushing back at work, because I was probably being taken advantage of a little bit with the amount of hours when it probably wasn't as necessary.
That's a great point, man. I think so many people, myself included, I know I could definitely resonate with that myself. I know I've shared my story with you several times, and I've shared it in the public quite a bit. Not just in the W-2 world, but even in my companies when I first started the entrepreneurial journey, man. Looking back, of course, hindsight's always 2020. You can always say, "Man, I wish I had." Seen X, Y, and Z, but at the time, you can't fault yourself, because you're at that point in time, you thought you were chasing the right thing for the right reasons. And looking back, I can resonate, man. I wish I had taken some time to be more present with my wife and kids, and been more involved, because once that time and once that moment is gone, it's never going to come back. We can always make more money, but time and money, or I'm sorry, time and energy, we can never get back in memories. So was there a specific moment that hit you? Like we were talking about in agreement before you hit record. Was there a specific moment that hit you, a conversation, a look in a mirror, or something that Logan said where you finally realized, I worked too hard for someone else, right? Because in this time, in this season, or somewhere around the long lines, you started to make a realization. Walk us through that, man.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same story. I'd say it's like somewhat emotional with the amount of hours that went through it. So it was a really large project. It was coming off of it was during COVID. So there was all these like weird expectations, demands. So it was 9 days on, 1 day off during the startup, 14-hour days, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then calls in the middle of the night. And the day that I was off and I went to work on the property that we were flipping at the time, she was really upset, cried some, made me feel really guilty, of course. But of course, I felt like I was being really pinched as a result of having all these different obligations, being the primary breadwinner at the time, as well as being stuck in a hard money loan that I needed to get out of. So I guess it would be like that moment, realizing that I was persevering, demonstrating the grit for a company that probably didn't value me the way that I valued my own time. Certainly not. And realizing that I need to be doing this for myself. So shortly after that project was finished and I got a little bit of free time back, 50, 60-hour work weeks instead, I started pivoting to something else that would provide me with that freedom to get away.
Love it, man. And I'm going to extract you like this because we talked about it in the green room and you said it, but I want to put the laser pointer right on this because you said this in your bio or in your guest intake. It was when I had to demonstrate grit for someone else that I realized the same focus and dedication could be used for myself, right? And I don't remember who it was. I had at this point I've had so many guests, it's a blur. But there is this perception that there is security in the 9 to 5. There is this sense of security that as long as we show up and do I'll say the absolute minimum, but do enough to not get fired, right? That there is security in that. So to the person that's listening to you right now, they're like, oh, he's got my attention, man. Okay. All right. I feel like he's talking to me right now. Walk us through this moment or through that person that you're talking to right now that's probably in the same position that you were 2, 3, 4 years ago. When did this realization, like you talked to us about that conversation or the realization with Logan and in that moment, but how long after that point did you say enough is enough, it's time for me to execute? Walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I want to say that there's really not the security in W-2s that people believe so. So I think I was a year and a half in, and there was a reduction in force that wasn't determined by management. It was determined by a parent company where they just wiped out 7% of the employees, no notice. So you're always in someone else's hands in those situations.
Yep.
So in regards to answer your question, that timing for that project and like flipping the house and the hours, it was in November. I had at that point left my job 4 months later and switched over to a different company, one that was going to be less hours. It was when I was at that job that had less hours that I really started like diving into like being a realtor, and shortly after dove into doing selling on Amazon. So it didn't take too much. I acted on it pretty fast, knowing that a change needed to come. I was pretty unhealthy. I was up to like 235 pounds at the time. And then just 3 or 4 months later, just having a better work schedule and eating a little bit healthier and taking care of myself, I dropped like 35 pounds, right? Just to show off like the stress that I was undergoing. So
that's incredible. And by the way, you look incredible. I mean, in a in a bro manner, but it's still you're on a health journey, right? I know one of your goals is to get 11% body fat, if I remember right, or 10% body fat by end of this year, and I think you're like within range. I think you're like 1 or 2% off.
Yeah, 10.6% this morning.
Okay, 0.6 off. That's one of the things I love about you, man. You're very precise. There is no like if or. You're very like what Jim said when you were on a podcast with me. Very matter of fact, and I love that about you, man. But yeah, man, that's a good point because early on, and I failed to highlight this in that season, man. You said you're physically exhausted. 7-11 or 7-11. Yeah, it is 7-11. 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day, right? No gym, no games, nothing left reminded you of the person who you used to be, right? You described yourself, just a worker at that point in time, and, give us a glimpse into that. When did you first notice that version of you was gone? That version of who you used to be was gone.
Do you mean the version that it was a worker, or the version of having an identity?
Well, that's a good point. Identity. Yeah.
I would say when I started working, to the request was for us to work 10 to 10. I had to get there 2 hours earlier. I'd get there 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Realizing that no one really cared one way or the other is kind of when I realized I started moving into like that worker, just being a worker versus someone that was actually making an impact that was like visible. So I put a lot of identity in that. I used to also put a lot of identity into the health aspect. So when I got on the scale, I think I saw first it was like 225. I started realizing that who I was kind of fading away, and just accommodating whatever was necessary and only really prioritizing work at the time.
It's a good point, man. And real quick before we keep rolling, maybe life hit you hard. Business fell apart. Career isn't working out. Relationship ended. Health took a dive. And now you're staying in the rubble trying to figure out what the next move even looks like. Or maybe nothing blew up at all. On paper, you're winning, sure. But on the inside, something's off. If you're not in crisis, you're at a crossroads. And the playbook that built the life you have is not the playbook that builds the one you want. Either way, you're stuck. Not broken, stuck. Between who you were and who you're becoming. Most self-help just piles more weight on the load you're already carrying. I do not want to do that. I put together a free video series called The Grit Code Exposed, and I want to invite you to check it out. 7 short videos, that's it. The 5 laws that change everything for me and every client I coach. The same 5 that every person who's ever come back from the fire has walked through, whether they had a name for it or not. No fluff, no 90-minute webinar, no bait, just the free video series. You can start it tonight. Grab it at gritcodeexposed.com. One more time, gritcodeexposed.com. It's free. You don't need any more hustle. You need the next version, and this is how you find it. Check it out. See if it speaks to you, and if it does, I'll see you on the inside. All right, let's get back to the conversation. It takes a lot of courage, dude, to look in a mirror and be like, something's got to change, and to have that conversation with yourself. And for me personally, I know it took too long. In my opinion, even one day is one day too long. But unfortunately, people delay that conversation until it's too late, And that's what saddens me, is that people they're not courageous enough to look in the mirror, to see the physical change, to see the internal change. And that's hard to see. But when you look back, it's like, I'm not the person who I used to be. I used to be ambitious. I used to have dreams, hopes, and aspirations. But along the way, man, I just became a worker bee, and not that there's anything wrong with that. And let me say this up front. Entrepreneurship, being a builder, being a leader, in leading companies is not for everybody. You can be an intrapreneur as well. You don't have to be an entrepreneur where you're on your own. You can be an intrapreneur, working for a company where you have some autonomy. So, I just want to make sure I clarify that. So, all right. So, you leave that season, right? You do it again, right? Or I think if I remember right, W-2 plus travel, 50 hours a week, plus a second business at 30 hours. That's, do the math. That's 80 hours. What made you think at that point in time it was going to be different that time?
At that point, I knew the concept wasn't necessarily different, right? The same total hours. Essentially, I had moved into a position that would limit me to like 50 hours. So when I did that, I knew I was signing up for essentially still 80-hour weeks. I think the concept of knowing that when you're building something yourself and you're in control, you have the opportunity to make the decisions that allow it to be scalable if you're willing to let go of the reins. So that was one of the things that helped me to pursue that and not necessarily pivot at the time. So, that first year when we were traveling full time at 30 hours a week, I'm continuing to put in a lot of time and some money to start it up, but you can continue to see it like build on itself, knowing that it's going somewhere.
Yeah.
I was treated pretty well from a pay perspective at my previous job, so no gripes on there. Some pretty large pay bumps, but there's still a limit, right?
Sure.
You don't get 130% increases like we had last year, or so that's where when you're building it for yourself, you get to see the output more rewarding than I'd say on average, a 4 to 6% raise at a W-2 employer.
That's a great point, man. It's not just the money aspect too. It's also the freedom, right? The freedom of being able to do what you want, when you want, within reason. And this is something I want to dive into, because right now we're only painting a picture of, what you've accomplished, but, you traded one job for another in some ways, because even when you left the W-2 world or the corporate world, you went all in on this Amazon business. At some point, you stopped running it in the wrong direction, right? And you said more isn't necessarily better, which I completely agree. When did that actually click for you? Was it something that was gradual, that was building up? Or was there a specific moment that was like a straw that broke the camel's back that made you realize, peace, I'm out. I need to focus on Amazon?
Yeah. The target was for us to essentially replace income. Is what it was. I did not hit it that first year, but we at least looked at what does it take for us to be able to live. So when we were in the camper, calls are a little bit cheaper, not as cheap as people think. But if I made the same amount that I made, by selling $1 million, and then with Logan being a travel nurse at the time, we knew that we could make it through. We both knew that my enjoyment with engineering was really decreasing the fulfillment associated with it. It was becoming pretty draining, especially the projects that I was being assigned.
Makes sense.
We had the opportunity to travel, see the country, right? So that's an experience that is hard to put a value on, especially when you're young and able to do those types of adventures. So we kind of just said, we won't have this opportunity again ever at the age we are. And most people don't get to do the full-time camper life until they're retired. And, 15-mile hikes aren't as exciting when you're 60 as opposed to when you're 25.
That's a good point, man. I'm not there yet, but I'm not near where you were or where you are now. So I can definitely understand that perspective. Walk us, man, in this process, dude. And I want to hear your take on this, because for me, I have my perspective or, my walk. But to the person that's listening to you right now, they're thinking, oh man, that sounds, great. He must not have been scared at all. There was no fear. It was like you had no fear. Like everything was perfect. Like everything was grandiose, right? And so talk to that person that's listening to you right now, because I have my perspective, but I want to hear yours first. Was there any moments where you had doubts? Was there any moments where you were scared, thinking, man, especially after you left, and now it's all on you, right? It is literally all on you. to show up, whether you feel like it or not, or whatever? Were you scared? Were there any moments where you had self-doubt? Were there any moments where you wanted to give up?
Yeah, I'll give an example from when we first made that switch, and then I have one from yesterday that's really ironic. So 3 months in, we were doing online arbitrage in the space. I was doing a lot within like Black and Decker brand. Got a cease and desist. Ended up getting threatened for like lawsuits. So I got really nervous. Decided to make a full pivot. Come out, I made $4,000 on $200,000 in sales, so 2% net margin. And I'm sitting here thinking I should have just stayed with engineering.
Yeah.
We're about to go on like a 3-month prepaid vacation, kind of going across the country. I decided to completely pivot business models at the time to wholesale. So I'm getting pinched on money at the time, getting pinched on capability, rebuilding all new systems. And I know that my time's about to drop to like 20 to 25 hours a week because when we were traveling, we were trying to jump from place to place. So I would say like really scary and a lot of doubt. I came up with that. I remember talking to Logan and kind of feeling like a failure because of how much the income had decreased. And I made all these grand promises that I wasn't fulfilling at the time.
That's deep, dude. And I'm glad you said what you just said, literally what you just said, word for word, because that is something that so many people think, but they don't say out loud. And that was exactly what I was aiming, not really what I was wanting you to say. That's what I was hoping you would say, because I can resonate with this, and I know a lot of people who has tried to do anything great has had the same thoughts, right? And too many people are so close, man. They're like right there, like, man, this isn't for me. And they leave, or they quit. And it's like, bro, if you just took one more swing, if you just made one more phone call, one more email, one more something, that'd have been your swing to hit a gold mine, And so with that, what made you say, no, I'm going to give it one more day, or I'm going to give it one more something? What made you do that?
Well, I like to put myself in positions where you can't go back, right? I had already left the company once. I left it twice. And they said I can't be hired back, right? I think that's a great way to force grit, because if you don't have another option, you figure out how to make it work. I knew I didn't want to go back to engineering. So by essentially quitting and moving 3,000 miles away, I kind of removed that option to go back.
I hope that if you're watching or listening, you just heard I hope you just heard what I heard. He intentionally put himself in a situation where he had to move forward. He intentionally put himself in a corner and be like, or put his back in it and so on. Like, there's the only way through is through. There is no turning back. You're essentially burning the boats. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I think it's the best way to make sure you don't get back in the boat.
Yeah, you definitely want to go back into a burning boat, or a bridge that you're blown up with some C4. That's a great point, man. When I sold my companies, and even when that transition didn't quite come to fruition like I had hoped and what we were promised and so forth. I mean, had that season occurred while I was still living in Alabama, where I was literally 5 miles away from the gate of Fort Rucker in Alabama, I could have gotten my job back and gone back to being in that life, which I was miserable in. But my back was against the wall. That's a great perspective, man. I appreciate you sharing that. So 0 to 7 figures in 1 year. Walk us through that, because that's a pretty stout claim, right? That doesn't happen by accident. So what did the infrastructure look like for you to scale that fast? And, we're talking top line there. Walk us through what the bottom line looked like for you too.
Yeah. I guess going back, just make sure I keep all the numbers straight. Started in July of 2022, threw $5,000 into the business to get proof of concept. Buying some stuff for $80 and selling it for $200 on Amazon was a pretty quick proof of concept at the time.
Yep.
Started doing like another $5,000. Continued through 2022, built up to like $10,000-$15,000 months, a lot of OA sourcing, ended up finding a good RA place back home that I was able to go to. By the end of 2022, we had 15,000 invested, and my parents loaned me $5K as well as like 0% interest, just trying to show the support.
Yeah.
And they knew I was capital constrained, and Logan was going back to school, so really buying into the concept, which was very nice of them.
Yeah.
And then in January, we started traveling full time in the camper at that point, while I was still working the W-2. So we ended up moving to Texas temporarily. I found a store that was closing down there. Spent like $25,000 with them, sold it for like $140,000, like crazy margins. So that was like a cash flow that we really needed help with.
Yeah.
So we jumped to like $50,000 months almost immediately. Ended up going up to Massachusetts shortly after. And then this would have been May timeframe. Found a set of 4 stores that are like, I'm gonna call it a clearance, but it's it's a liquidation outlet for a main company. So UPCs, they're all accepted by Amazon, so it's legitimate.
Yeah.
Literally jumped up to 100K within a month of being up there.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah. So for that first year, I think we finished out at like 18% net. So it was pretty good. It was already liquidation. It was a lot of work. We would spend every weekend doing like the same 4-hour drive, picking up as much as we could. And then we would prep all week out of the camper. I remember like Uline would come and drop off pallets, and our campsite was not happy.
I imagine not. Oh man. I can actually picture this, to be honest with you. When I had my warehouse, I know how much they deliver and what their pallet stack looks like. And I'm just imagining, Uline dropping off or, whatever freight they're using for your area to drop off these pallets, man. That's hilarious.
A full semi going through the campground.
Don't mind us.
Yeah. I was at work though, so Logan had to deal with them.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that definitely put some tension between the husband and wife.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, man. Logan, bless your heart, man. Oh, my gosh. Man, so you essentially started with almost nothing because, oftentimes when people talk about building and scaling companies, especially to the magnitude you've accomplished, man, I don't think enough accolades, it's about the best way I could say it, has been given to you, because scaling that fast, putting that much work into it, and doing what you've accomplished, that takes a lot of work, man. But to the average person that's probably listening right now, doesn't quite comprehend this. They think, you probably started with 500,000 or 200,000 or 300,000, right? But you literally, if I understood correctly, you started with 5,000.
Started with 5,000, and we've only ever put in 15,000.
Yeah. So, so it took. What I heard, man, or what I heard from you is it took a lot of work, took a lot of grit, took a lot of perseverance, to see it through. And making good decisions, which I want to dive into, because I think this is an area I think you really excel in. And I mean that in a very good way. You talk about building on data instead of emotions, right? And I think this is what, actually, I'm pretty confident this is what largely contributing to your success, because you have that innate ability to sort out and hone in on the data with emotions removed. So for the person that's listening, who's making purchasing decision and so forth, and hoping it works out, break that down. Like when we say, I go off of data instead of emotions, what do you mean by that? What changed in the swap for the structure there?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, engineering background. I love math. I love data. Excel sheets everywhere.
Yes, you do.
One of the things we want to make sure we're always doing, especially on the purchasing side, is considering all of the data points. So depending on like a lot of different softwares, they don't account for like inbound shipping, returns, prep fees, etc. So for a long time, we were pulling a bunch of exports from various softwares together to make those purchasing decisions. And then one of the other things that we realized is, especially depending on the model, we do a lot of like replenishables, which makes our life a lot easier to scale, right? And we purposely went that route because it is scalable. Accounting for like quantity that's already been ordered, inbound, et cetera. You have about 7 different data points you have to track and put in different like formulas to it and put in confidence intervals. So we were doing like a bunch of Excel macros to accomplish this for like a long time. But even then, my ops manager at the time for about 300 ASINs was spending 11 hours a week on it. So we wanted to improve that a little bit.
Yeah.
We ended up kind of like building out a proprietary formulas and calculations that kind of led into Replen Pulse's creation.
Nice.
So now we currently have about 920, 940 active SKUs at any time, or ASINs. And it's all loaded for us now using that calculation. So it makes my job really easy. Our buy list is created within 30 minutes each week now.
That's
It would have taken 33 hours for my ops manager at the time to do the same work.
Wow. All right. So let's break this down for a second. You love math. So what does that save? Let's talk about savings for a moment. What does that save somebody, right? Let's talk about economics for a moment. Dive into that if you won't mind.
Yeah. So depending on whether you're using a VA or if you want to use like, the buy back your time principle, a quarter of whatever your hourly rate is.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, if you make $100,000 a year, you're making about $50 an hour. So you take a quarter of that. So at best case scenario, you can consider that $12.50 per hour. Mm-hmm. So for me at 33 hours a week, that'd be $340 a week, which I do make a little bit more than that, to clarify. And
yes, you do.
4 weeks a month. So at minimum, there would be $1,200 to $1,400 saved. VAs can be like a little bit cheaper, but honestly, we try to pay really good because we have really good employees. So it's not too far off depending on who it is with bonuses.
Love it, man. I'm a huge proponent for looking at the value of what you're paying, right? Instead of looking at the cost. That was a perspective shift I had to make for myself, was instead of looking at the cost, at the surface level of the cost, whether it's a monthly fee or it's a VA. You said you pay a VA as well. If I'm understand correctly, it's because you're paying for the outcome, right? You're paying for the value you're getting in exchange. You saw that they show up. There's loyalty there. There's honesty. There's integrity. Things that you can't train in people, right? So you want to recognize that. You want to pay for that. You want to show certificates of appreciation. Our mutual friend Jim loves to say that quite a bit. But I'm a huge proponent of paying for value, not paying for cost. So I'm glad you articulated that, because when somebody looks at software or coaching or whatever, they look at the cost like, man, that's a lot of money. Okay. Is it? What's the cost of not moving forward, with a software? What's the cost in your business, in your company, if you don't choose this software? That's only costing you a couple $100 a month, right?
I completely agree. In fact, in 2022, we jumped into a bunch of softwares, right? Figuring out what really provides the value and output that we want. We jumped immediately into coaching. Obviously, you and I work together for every year now as coaching, which I'm grateful for. I think I've gotten a lot of value out of it. I was just pulling it up. Market Pulse put out a statistic the other day that of like the total 100% of like available margin, it's only 3.6% is spent on software and tools compared to everything else associated with it. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people in like the OA and wholesale space are even lower than that because private label is more expensive.
Yeah.
But any software that we have that can save us time and the confidence associated with it, right? Making sure that the numbers there are true and accurate. What my lead sourcer can go through like our software and make a buy list, and I'm confident in the numbers, right? So being able to make it delegatable to your team helps out a lot. That's why we pay for like Seller Snap, right? You want the best of the best.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I'm glad you said this or you touched on this, having the confidence in the right people, the right systems and so forth, because here's what most people don't know, or we haven't really talked about, only that I know. The hardest part wasn't necessarily, it hasn't been scaling, 11 million, right? Or even beyond that now at this point. We were just talking about this yesterday. Had goosebumps, man, just how this trajectory that you're on, man, it's just fascinating, man. It really deserves front row seats to this. But it's been learning how to stop touching everything. If for the last year you've been in the middle of a shift, and this is one of the things I know we've been working on, is shifting from operator CEO, right? Stop being, in the weeds of things and start elevating yourself to be the founder, to be the CEO, so that you can focus on what God's gifted you with, right? And so talk to me about that. What's the work you've had to hand off? I know we've talked about, Replen Pulse and that, but, what is some of the other work you've had to hand off you thought that nobody else could do the right way?
Yeah, lead review would be one, because that all funnels into like the purchasing decisions. Some bad decisions there can cost really dramatically. So I tend to try to be pretty conservative, a lot of checks and balances. So we have a lead sourcer who now goes and trains, so the leads submitted are better. We have a lead sourcer that reviews the leads. We have an ops manager that reviews the reviewed leads. So again, it's a lot of like repetition, but it provides me with the confidence that whatever comes to me for like the final purchasing decision is kind of there. So right now I'm still doing like the creation of the buy list, but almost all the purchasing has been moved over to our ops manager. She's really intelligent, and trust her. She's very, takes a lot of initiative.
Nice.
Which again, like having a great team makes a dramatic impact.
Yes.
Distributor outreach and identification. There's so many, I don't want to say it like too much, but there's enough AI tools to find good distributors now that the amount of workload.
I'll edit that part out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, the amount of workload is like very dramatically reduced now. So that's I think moving those types of aspects out also allows me to focus on the bigger items that move the business forward, continue to build more systems. Now that I have that free time, I also have the energy and bandwidth to think and determine what really are the major constrictions on the business. Especially within Amazon, you either need more ASINs, more money, or more sources to get through those ASINs, right? Yeah. So it's always one of the three. It's either hire more money or more outreach. Yeah. So just constantly working on those three categories.
Nice. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing. I hope people are paying attention to this, because I know there's something that everybody has that they feel like nobody else could do better than them. And I just want to challenge that person that I bet there is. Unless it's something that you genuinely love doing, then you probably are better than most people could do it. But that's a different story. We're talking about things that you don't need to be doing, that you absolutely hate. And you and I have been jamming on quite a bit of this, because there's a lot of stuff that you're doing that you're like, bro, I don't like doing this stuff, man. Fast forward today, man. Your company is running at scale. I'm truly impressed. I'm not saying this to hype you up. I am truly impressed. Replen Pulse is, as of this recording, is going to be launched. Your team has doubled in the last 2 months. What are you most fired up about right now, man?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not prepared for that. I think the thing that fires me up the most is honestly the hiring. We give a salary that exceeds a normal pay over there. We're constantly giving raises, bonuses. Every time I hear back from the team about something that like the money made an impact for them, honestly feels the most rewarding. At this point, we live pretty comfortably. So it's really just the impact that we get to do for other people now, whether, tithing, giving, et cetera, or, giving back to the employees. A lot of them are now getting familiar, because we'll give bonuses at certain times of the year that are kind of like a surprise, but some of the ones that have been around a little bit longer are probably expecting it. But, having an employee that made $2.25 an hour, and now they're making like $6-7 an hour with bonus is like pretty life changing for them.
Yeah, dude, that is life changing. Wow, and that also says a lot about you too, man, as a person, because. And again, there's nothing wrong with what I'm about to say here, but not to say that, but there's a lot of people that would take the delta of that and just put it into something different, whether it's growth in their business or their own pockets. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for you, that is your joy. That brings joy to you to see yourself be able to have the capacity financially to change somebody's life, man. I admire that about you, man, because we need more of that. We do truly need more of that in our society today, because the way the world is running, man, between healthcare and all these other things that's popping up, man, people are hurting these days. And it's not like by the dozens or the hundreds; it's by the tens of, if not hundreds of thousands. So I just want to applaud you for that, man. Let's dive into something that came out of the systems that you built for yourself. We're kind of like throwing it out there a few times already. You lived the problem before you built the software. So walk me through how the SaaS solution was born. What gap did you see that nobody else was filling? And I'm kind of like looking to side here for a moment, because I used to have a SaaS platform. I used to have a SaaS tool with Jimmy Smith and Greg Flint, but that's in the past. But talk us about that, man.
Yeah. A lot of variety of softwares kind of all touched the point of restocking recommendations. Each of them had their own advantages. I think between all of them, none of them had the following. None of them accounted for sales over like the last 30 days. They weren't tracking whether you were in stock or not. The other option was, if you sold 30 units in 3 days, you probably need more than 30 units. Some softwares were saying you just need 30 units. The
Makes
other one
sense.
that's pretty big, especially for like our business, because we get limited on how much we can place per order, but we can place a lot of orders. Being able to account for what's in transit, what's back ordered, et cetera, and all feeding that into the same numbers, and having a lead time that is essentially auto-populated per ASIN.
Yeah.
So essentially combining all of that and then putting statistical confidence intervals around it based off of like the given data. Essentially that was all put into like the Excel sheet, and that kind of just, since switching over to doing that systematically versus manually, I can throw out numbers, right? Like our storage fees are less than 0.2% of revenue. So for perspective, this past month we were 0.14% of our revenue storage fees. Low inventory fees was $123.
Wow.
So that's essentially how efficient it is now. And it's all automated. It makes it really easy to automatically know how to like purchase all the items as well. So you get to stay in stock more, you get the benefit, and overall margins are just improving as well as a result.
Real quick before you go, if you're still with me this deep into the episode, something in it hit you. Maybe it was the guest. Maybe it was one line. Either way, you're still here. And that feeling in your chest right now, that's the signal. Most people get a signal like that and do absolutely nothing with it. They close the app, life rushes back in, the moment's gone. 6 months later, they're in the exact same spot. I don't want that for you. So I put something together. I want to invite you to check out a free video series called The Grit Code Exposed. 7 short videos. The 5 laws I walk every client through. The same ones that rebuilt me when everything else fell apart. And if you listen closely today, you heard them running underneath the entire conversation. Because everyone who's come back from the fire walks through these 5 laws. Some find them on their own, some get help, but the laws don't change. Free video series. You can start it tonight. No fluff, no 90-minute webinar, just the series. And if you're going to do something with what you heard today, do this before life talks you out of it. Go to gritcodeexposed.com. One more time, gritcodeexposed.com. And hey, before I let you go, thank you for riding with me this long. It means a lot more than you know. Thank you. This is incredible. So what you just touched on was another part of the savings that we never talked about, right? We only talked about the buybacks principle that, that you and I share a common thread in with Dan Martell. But you shared the other side of the coin. I think is even, I wouldn't say more impactful, but it adds to the bottom line, right? Savings on because if it's not in your pockets, in Amazon's pockets, and their pockets are big enough, it's time to put them back in yours. But man, that's massive, dude. I mean that truly is, And so with that, help the average person understand because your passion, if I understood correctly, or your aim, I wouldn't necessarily say this your passion, but your aim is to help sellers that are in that 40, 50-ish to over $100,000 a month plateau, right? To get them past that, right? Now that's pretty specific. Help us understand why that group, like what did they get wrong that you see over and over again?
Yeah. So I think, first off, everybody has the goal of get to $1 million in revenue, right? That's the goal. It starts to become when you can make it you could live a life off of it.
Yeah.
So I think people kind of drop off in motivation, right? If you don't have a goal to achieve, it's very easy to become complacent, especially if they don't have the grit to get through it.
Yes.
So for me, I find that a lot of people at that point don't have the systems. They have a significant quantity of self-dependency. And as a result, they lose a lot of the ASINs or don't necessarily know how to be as efficient. I think it was really easy to get to 100,000 for us personally, using like our RA and doing a lot of work. But we plateaued at like 100, 120, 140 for almost a year. I think it was like 9 or 10 months. That's when I was working full time. I didn't have the time to make the systems. So I got 30 hours. I'm going to spend it. And that's kind of what it costs to get me through that, get me to those 100K months. So the whole purpose of like the software is essentially to remove all the time associated with buying decisions for the replenishables. A lot of people forget about their ASINs. So, going back for the last 2 years, having the repository, gate checks, the up-to-date ROI calculations, et cetera, to make that a little bit easier. So that way they're spending less time sourcing and more time buying.
Nice.
And then just overall improvement in margins, right? If you have more money, you can reinvest more.
Yeah, exactly. Or put more money back in your pocket. One of the two ways, and let it be your decision what you do with the money, not somebody else's, or be in Amazon's hands. They've got enough money. That's pretty good feedback, man. And for the person who's stuck at 40-ish, 40 to 50, that can't figure out why they're not growing, where in your belief or in your experience, where do they start? What's the best way to find Replen Pulse, or maybe to potentially get some advice of how they could break that threshold?
Yeah. So I would say there's going to be two main things that you want to do. One, I am going to suggest Replen Pulse will help the efficiency, just because we'll help you stay in stock more.
Yeah.
Your sales increases as a result of having like 30 plus days of inventory. Amazon starts to favor you, and it helps you be a little bit more cost efficient. Secondly, start creating LIM videos of everything you do from an administrative perspective, and get on Online Jobs PH and hire an admin. I think that needs to come before sourcing. I think most people enjoy sourcing and are pretty good at it. No one likes doing admin activities. It's a drain on time and energy. And as you continue to scale and increase your sourcing, you're going to need more of an admin for all of those shipment discrepancies. So I think for the longest time, we were always told to hire sourcers.
That's true.
So up until we doubled our team size, so up through January, we would always have 2 to 3 sourcers, and we had 3 to 4 admin, just because I really just like the admin work. But it helps us grow. And it's also really cool when you start to be able to say, hey, we need to work on this. Can you do this project? They might take a little bit longer than you, but when you get an output that's reasonable, you realize you really did save time, and it puts a lot of ownership on them.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's a great point. It reminds me, I don't remember who it was specific, but I'll give Jimmy, I love Jimmy Smith, man. His ability to systemize things and his approach to systems. What you said right there just remind me of a conversation I had with him and somebody else, where the person you're hiring for admin, that's all they're focused on, right? That is the only lane that they're focused on. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you're focused on sourcing, and all these other things you're trying to do, and you're trying to be, 10% of their 80% that they're, of what they could accomplish, right? Or it may not be 10%, maybe higher than that. But the point is you're trying to do so many different lanes, so many different roles. You can't be 100% good in every single lane, right? That's a great point. And that's the first time I've actually heard somebody say that, to focus on admin first, not sourcing. That's a good point, man. A very good point.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's one of our greatest aspects because we have a really good admin team. A result, margins stay improved as a result. You have less holes as a result. And I know I'm saying a result a lot, but there's a lot of results that come from it.
Yeah.
It also just reduces your mental burden.
Oh, agree. I agree. There is a cost to that, man. The mental burden of that, mental burden, the confidence, all of that, man. There is a cost to that because it does wear down your energy. It just wears you down, and it takes your focus away from the things that you should be focusing on, right?
Yeah. Emotions play a really large part into it. So when you start seeing Amazon lost, $220 of inventory, regardless of what scale you're at, you're just like this, it's really frustrating, disappointing. So now I don't see it. We have a review once a month for essentially like a write-off or escalation review, but we go ahead and set that up for like the end of the day. So I get to like decompress afterwards. It's not affecting work. And we normally go and play a fun activity. That way I forget about it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like that, man. Thanks for sharing. That's a good wisdom, or that's some good action steps to take from this. If you didn't take anything from this call, it's one, get Replen Pulse, but two, to find ways to find an outlet to unplug from the day-to-day chaos. I know you and Logan, I think it was pickleball or it was pickleball.
That's
right?
what I was talking about too. That's what we do for fun after those bad meetings.
Yeah, I bet you. I feel sorry for that paddle or the pickleball. It's probably no longer a sphere. It's probably a square at that point. Man, this has been such an amazing conversation, man. I know we could talk so much longer, but for the sake of time, we can't, unfortunately, or fortunately. But as we wrap up, man, I got some rapid fire questions that we're going to go through that I ask every guest just to get your perspective in this. In this season of life, my dude, how do you personally define grit?
Sure. So for me, grit is the absence of motivation and being able to persevere anyway, whether good or bad motivation. I think a lot of people focus on persevering through when you're going through a spell or a valley in life.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of that valley is a mountain, and when everything's going really well, I think it's also hard to persevere as well because you don't have that motivation anymore because things are going the way that you want them to.
So good, so good. I agree, man. That's a good response. I think this next question is going to hit you, or it's going to resonate well with you, because especially in the season that you're in, going from operator to founder or CEO, and you know this about me too, in the season of life, I have been focused more on subtraction, addition by subtraction, because you hear so much talk about adding, right? Adding systems, adding strategies, add. So for you, man, what is it? What is something you're actively removing or subtracting to level up? It could be a belief or a system or something. What is it that you're doing?
The easy cop out would be saying that I'm removing purchasing, which saves me 6 hours a week. If you're looking for a little bit more detail, we can talk about, you helped us with like Claude and Cowork, essentially putting everything within our businesses into there, allowing for there to be a repository for our team to speak to, helping reduce the amount of questions that come to me, and just helping us be more consistent with our outputs to one another and to external entities.
Love it, man. I tell you, if you're not actively working on subtracting something, man, instead of just adding, you're going to get burnt out. So thanks for sharing it, my man. All right, last two questions. The last question is a two-part, but before I get into that, the second to the last question, when the lights go out and you're in the trenches, man, what do you repeat to yourself to pull yourself out of that period? What it could be a quote, scripture, maybe something that you've heard, like, oh, and you like that. It just encourages you through that moment.
Yeah. So it's a poem that I first read in Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed. Any wage I'd asked of life, life would have paid. So, within money, it's pretty clear. But outside of that, I think people's limits are set by themselves rather than what life would have set for them.
Yes.
Whether in business or externally. So, always set a goal too high, and then when you achieve it, set a higher one, because we are our own limiting factor.
That's so good, dude. I actually had goosebumps. I agree, man. In fact, we didn't mention this, or I didn't mention it, but you said something on your bio that I kind of threw up in the recording room or the green room. That you said we are in control of our own lives, right? Nothing worth having is easy. And I think, especially in today's times, we have this glorification of easy, like something should be easy in order to obtain it, and so, man, that's a good way of describing what you just talked about there in that poem, man. And again, that's one of my favorite books. You and I talked about quite a bit, for sure.
Mine too.
Well, awesome, man. Last question. It is a two-part. I'll ask the last part first because I get excited and I end up forgetting not asking it. So, what is one question that you will love to challenge my next guest with?
Sure. So, how do you distinguish between pushing through and showing grit versus knowing when to pivot and reevaluate?
Ooh, that reminds me of a book. You know what book I'm talking about, don't you?
Probably. Which one?
Essentialism, if I said that right.
Oh, yeah. I've read that one a couple times now.
Yep. Nice. I love that question, man. All right, man. So my previous guest, Murray Smith, he's a massive EOS implementer out of Australia. Funny dude, funny episode. But he had this question for you. And again, those that are listening or watching, if you're watching or listening for the first time, the lineup is completely anonymous. So even with Matt, I didn't tell him, hey, no, it's completely anonymous. So that being said, how much of your life was planned and how much of it was related to luck?
Ooh, I'm going to give the cop-out answer that I don't believe in luck. I think we constantly work to put ourselves in situations that make it seem to be transpired as a result of luck. But it's because we're constantly looking for those opportunities that luck, air quotes, finds us.
Yes. Woo. I got goosebumps on that one. I agree, man. Luck is when opportunity and preparation meets, man. Love it, dude. Awesome. Well, my guy, for the person that is listening to you, man, they're like, man, I want to connect with this dude because I want to check out a software, or maybe they just want to, connect with you because they want to be part of your journey. Where can they connect with you to learn from you or to even find about your software?
Yeah, a couple different ways, but I think the easiest thing would be for them to go to MatthewHassler.com. My socials and emails will be on there. I try to be pretty responsive, but I think that would be the best focal and center point for them to look.
Awesome. And for those that want to check out your software, Replen Pulse, is there a separate website for that, or you just want to go to MatthewHassler.com?
Yeah, they can go to ReplenPulse.com. If they go through the one for Matthew Hassler, we'll have a 30-day free trial set up for them.
Nice. So in other words, go to your website.
That would work.
Awesome, man. That is awesome. We'll be dropping all of this in the show notes, guys. So if you're listening and or watching and you're like, man, I want to check out the software. And guys, when I say go check out the software, I do mean check this out because I've come from the SaaS space. I've been where Matthew is today. And it is hard to find reliable software that will solve problems for you and have the confidence. You've heard Matthew say several times to have the confidence in the data that you're getting and to be free of that mental energy to execute is worth every penny that the software costs. So, all right, my dude, Matthew, man, it has been such an honor to have you today, man. I really appreciate you spending this hour with us and sharing some insights, sharing your journey, not just the highlight reel, but sharing the journey and giving us some tactics, that people could chew on to actually take action and get where you're going and where you're heading. So I appreciate you, my dude.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. And as always, it's really nice just to be able to chat with you.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. All right. To those that are listening and watching, the gap between average and excellence is just merely action, even imperfect action. Listen, please don't just watch or listen to this episode. Take one thing that Matthew has described here or told you and talked about and implement it today, not tomorrow, not Monday, Friday, unless the episode's actually dropping today on a Friday or Monday. I'll give you that alibi, but please take action on it. Don't feel like you have to feel ready. Action creates the feeling. Be the reason someone doesn't quit today. Please don't just keep this episode to yourself. Someone in your circle needs this episode right now, so send it to them. Again, my dude, Matthew, thank you so much for stepping in your arena today, man.